Hey, welcome in everyone. My name is Trix. I'm here to give you some hardcore tips for Diablo 2 Resurrected. Hope you enjoy this video. Make sure you like it and subscribe to my channel. I also stream on Twitch and YouTube Mondays, Fridays, and Saturdays from 9 to 3 Central. So check me out there, and here we go. My first hardcore tip seems pretty straightforward, but it is do not die. I used to not care about dodging projectiles or kiting enemies, but now when I play hardcore, I make sure to engage and disengage when I need to, when a potion is like healing me up. I funnel enemies through the door. I also sidestep projectiles. This is very handy so you don't get hurt. In hardcore, you should also worry about your resistances. For hardcore, you definitely want to keep your resistances high. For example, before entering Act 2, I usually go shop around and look for lightning resistance gear. This will be important when you run into beetles. Those guys are pretty deadly. When entering Nightmare in Hell, I like to keep my resistances at least 60% or max. This is important because it gets a little harder once you reach the other difficulties. I usually do this by making rune words that we'll talk about later in the video. Chance to block is also a really good strategy for Hell. I like to keep it pretty high. Usually I'll run around with at least 60. It goes up to 75%. That's the max. You can check your percent chance to block by hovering over the defense in your character screen. Something to keep in mind is that your chance to block is actually cut by a third when your character is running. So if you walk into a certain type of ranger group, make sure you toggle run walk. Make sure that's on a hotkey because it's important. I walked a lot when I was playing a Zeal Paladin in Hell. There were a lot of ranger groups that I was walking into, and it was important to toggle back and forth, and it was very helpful. For sorceresses, it's a little bit different. I wouldn't recommend chance to block being at max just because they can teleport around. Instead, for sorceresses, I'd make sure they'd have high faster cast rate and faster hit recovery. It's also important, if you don't want to die, to have a decent amount of vitality. The general rule is to make sure that you use just enough strength points to use your gear that you have and the rest in vitality, unless you're trying to get your chance to block to increase, and in that case you would put points into dex. For Hell, I'm the most comfortable running around with 1100 HP. I usually hoard as many life charms as I can find throughout the run, and then once I reach Hell, I'm wearing like the best ones I find to reach that threshold. 1100 is usually the most comfortable. From there, it just keeps increasing. My second tip for playing hardcore is accepting your fate. You will die, and it will suck. You might even die from something that you can't even control, like disconnecting from a game or your cat walking on your keyboard. You never know. Something bad can happen, and you will die. It happens to the best of us, but don't let it discourage you. Dying is just part of hardcore, so move on, make a new character, and don't cry too hard about it. I find dying stings a little less when I actually have other characters to play that I had been playing before. Starting from the beginning after being like in Hell with really good gear feels awful. It helps a little bit with the sting when you have characters that you've already made and you start to work on already. Hopefully you'd been saving some gear on the way when you do need to start a new character. This brings us to the third tip that I have, which is collect gear and save it if it's useful. Always look for bases that could be good for basic rune words like Insight or Ancient's Pledge. Just keep those around even if you don't need them at the time. They might come in handy later. I also like to keep around resistance gear, high resistance gear. That's for a low level character. So recently I had found a 30% fire res sash. Okay, sashes suck, but it's pretty good if you reach Act 4 and you need some fire res. I also like to keep extra mercenary gear for a low-level mercenary, usually using Act 2 mercenaries, so they need a lifesteal helmet. Worm skulls are great for that. Just any high damage Volges that you find on the way, and Dariel has dropped me a couple good ones. I'll keep them around. Speaking of gear, my next tip, the fourth tip, would be shop at NPCs. Shop at the vendors in town. They carry some decent res gear if you take the time to actually look and refresh the vendors. Farah in Act 2 actually sells bases for Ancient's Pledge and Black Rune Word. She sells 3 open socket shields and 3 open socket flails. When entering Act 4, I like to be at least 50 fire res and lightning res. In order to do that, I will take the time to shop vendors, Charcy, Farah, all of them. I'll just check to see if they have armor that I could use that has high resistance. So I'll definitely be checking the gloves, belts, and boots. The helmets too. Usually by this time in Act 4, I'm using a stealth rune word armor, so maybe not the armor, but everything else I will be checking. You can always reload the map if you're playing online, and that resets everything. So if you get a vendor that's close to the exit of the town, that's perfect because you can just run back and forth. Every time you come back to town, their inventory refreshes, so something new will be there waiting for you. Hopefully it's a good resistance item. This is also a good strategy if you are trying to shop for a teleport staff. I like to make sure the map is beside Drognon, I believe that's how you say his name. The exit, of the town is right beside him, so I can just run back and forth until he sells me a nice teleport staff. My 5th tip is to use rune words. There are some easy to acquire rune words that will improve your survivability and are very important to use. The first rune word I think virtually all characters should use is one I already mentioned, which is stealth. Stealth is really easy to make. You can just run normal Countess enough times that you find a Tal F. This gives you faster hit recovery, faster cast rate, and faster run walk. All very important stats to use for survivability in hardcore. The second rune word I would recommend making for all my characters, I make this one. It's called Ancient's Pledge. It goes in a shield that you can actually buy from Farah, a 3-socket open shield. And this rune word gives you a ton of resistances. You can actually get all of these runes in Act 5 by completing the quest where you save the barbarians in the Frigid Highlands. I almost always still have the Ancient's Pledge equipped when I reach Hell. It's that good. When preparing for Hell though, I make sure I have a smoke armor. This usually brings me up to max or close to max reses in Hell. It's pretty cheap to make. It's just an F-lum in a 2-socket armor. Sometimes though, I will have to cube up to make the lum rune, which requires 3 IOs and a flawed topaz. So make sure you're keeping all of your gems on a gem mule because you never know when you'll need them. I will run Nightmare Countess and Nightmare Cows before entering Hell to hopefully find that lum rune or be able to cube up. Nightmare Hellforge also has a chance to drop the lum rune for you, so make sure you complete that quest in Act 4. The smoke rune word, by the way, actually gives you 50 all res, which is huge for Hell. Another rune word that most characters use, probably all characters, would be the lore, at least in the beginning of ladder. It's only an aura and a soul rune. Would I make a lore before an insight? Probably not. I would save my soul rune for the insight just because the characters I play are pretty mana heavy. But once I get that second soul, I'm definitely making the lore helmet, which is, it gives you plus to all skills, and 30 lightning res. Rhyme is another rune word. It's a shield. It gives you 25 all res and cannot be frozen. It's also just a shale and an Eth rune, so pretty easy to make and very useful. Another important rune word that I almost forgot to mention is the spirit rune word. This can go in a sword and shield. It's pretty important to make it early because it's so strong. So normally I would use my Larza quest on a sword that I find in normal cows. This will give it the 4 sockets that's required to make the rune word. Spirit is great because it gives you +2 to skills. It also gives you faster cast rate, faster hit recovery, vitality, and mana. In shields, not only does Spirit give you the +2 to skills again, it also gives you 35 cold res, 35 poison, and 35 lightning res. So it's super useful to make. Comment below other useful rune words that are kind of cheap and easy to make at the beginning ladder, because I probably forgot a bunch. My 6th tip is use potions. Always, always, always carry rejuves in your belt. Rejuves will instantly give you health and mana back, so that can be your saving grace when you're in a spicy situation where maybe you could almost die. You need to instantly give yourself health back. Definitely keep the rejuves, always. At least have one section full of rejuves. You can have multiple. Sometimes I like to run a three rejuve spots, and the last one's just a health potion. super useful. You can craft rejuves by using chip gems. 1 chip gem with 3 health potions and 3 mana potions of any kind will create you a rejuve. So there's no excuse to not have rejuves unless you don't have your cube. And also you can create the large rejuve potion by using 3 small rejuves in your cube. Potions like Thawing Potion and the Antidote are super helpful when fighting Duriel and Indariel respectively. Indariel can melt you with poison. She can also melt your mercenary, so you can always drink the antidotes ahead of time to give yourself more poison res, or use them on the spot to take off the poison debuff that she puts on you. Thawing Potion is the same idea with Duriel. You'll still be frozen from Duriel's Holy Freeze aura, but Duriel's attacks that include cold damage, the Thawing Potions can help negate that. Negate the amount of damage that you get just a little bit. Duriel still hurts no matter what, but it helps. So make sure you drink your Thawing Potions before entering the tomb. By drinking potions all at once before entering the fight, this saves room in your belt. The Thawing Potions anyway, it saves room in your belt, so make sure you do that. Just chug them, and you can give your mercenary all those potions too. It helps. My 7th tip is pay attention to enemy modifiers and be aware of what enemies could potentially be waiting for you in an area zone. Some monsters are more deadly than others, and you should avoid them completely. Talking to you, dolls. Potentially dangerous modifiers that I can think of would be an elite with conviction in an area with burning souls, fanaticism rangers, amp damage on your head, so cursed with might or extra strong modifiers. Very deadly combos. Make sure you guys comment below with the most dangerous enemy combination modifiers that you've seen. I'd be interested to hear some of those. If an area like Durns of Hate contains dolls, it's best to just reroll the map. If you have the waypoint, just save and exit your game and try again, make a new game and see what's in there. Keep in mind, in an area there will be 3 types of monsters that spawn. So if you're in Durns and you see that there's zombies, maulers, ghoul lords, and no dolls, you're good. You're good to go. There won't be any dolls around the corner waiting for you. Now, monsters that I just mentioned, like maulers, kind of come with their own dangers. They can stun lock you. If you don't have faster hit recovery, stun lock can really be deadly. It can stop you from teleporting or opening portals. So it's just not good. But if we're comparing dolls to maulers, I will take the possibility of getting stun locked over a doll exploding in my face and just insta-dying. The one time Jamali enters the fight and he kills a doll beside me and I almost die. It happens. Another consideration is to just stay away entirely from zones that are too deadly and dangerous, especially for an undergeared character. For example, I usually don't like to enter the Hell Tower because I'm just going to assume that there's a scary pack of rangers in there that have really awful modifiers that will insta-kill me if I turn the corner too fast, or just Frigid Highlands Waypoint. My load screens can be really long if I'm not in legacy mode. So if I enter the waypoint and there's rangers sitting there for me, I'm gonna die. So I just avoid those places entirely at the very beginning, at least, when I don't have gear, when I don't have damage reduction, when I don't have my chance to block max. I don't go there. My 8th tip is learn how to map read. By learning the directions of the next area or where you're supposed to be going, you stay in the scary danger zones for less time, which means less opportunity to die. So learning where to go is super helpful. Act 5 zones are a great example for this. Sometimes you just can't reload the map, so there's less dangerous monsters to fight because there are just so many dangerous monsters in Act 5. There's Moonlords, there's the Snake dudes that stun lock you, there's the Pindle dudes that stun lock you, there's the Succubus ladies, the Lancer ladies that do a ton of damage. Like, sometimes you just can't get a good map. And in that case, it's just best to know which direction to go in so you have to fight the least amount of scary monsters. There are a ton of great resources on how to map read. There's a bunch of videos on YouTube, which I would recommend, but I'm also going to link the Maxroll map reading guide. It just tells you the general directions on where to go. It doesn't actually explain map reading that well, I don't think. Personally, I needed a video. I needed a visual explanation, but I'm going to post the Maxroll directions down below in the description section, and I would recommend learning how to map read. Once I knew how to map read or which direction was what, all I needed was just the max roll guide up to tell me, okay, the level 2 Halls of the Dead is left. That's it. Now I've pretty much memorized them, which is it's the type of guy you getting. My 9th tip is make sure you're a good teammate. If you're playing with people, when they say 1 on hardcore, that means the portal is safe. If they say 2, that means the portal is dangerous or it's hot. This is not always the case though. Some people like to grief and they will say 1 when it's definitely 2 or just like a bunch of monsters waiting to kill you. That's happened to me before. I make sure that if I'm playing with a group of people, someone goes in before me. I watch them go in, I look at their character and make sure their health doesn't go down or anything, and then I'll go in. Be mindful of the people around you. Don't just pop seals when people are in compromised positions. Sorry, Zero. My final tip is save and exit when things get dicey. If you bit off more than you can chew or you got surrounded by enemies that could potentially kill you, save and exit. Just save and exit. It's not a big deal. That's all the hardcore tips and tricks for me. I hope you guys have a good hardcore journey. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. I am playing a ton of ladder season 6. So if you guys are into community playing, make sure you're around on YouTube and Twitch during the times I mentioned earlier. 9 to 3 on Mondays, Fridays, and Saturdays. Also, join the Discord. Thanks for watching.